Welcome to episode 8 of the Hunt Backcountry podcast presented by Exo Mountain Gear. In tonight's episode, it's myself, Mark Hilsing, hanging out with Steve, and once again, Lenny. We're just kind of hanging out. We're right in the midst of season. Steve and Lenny have both filled tags. They're getting ready to head to Alaska. I'm getting ready to head to Colorado. And so this is just one of those in-season episodes where we're just kind of catching up on what's going on. I know that you'll enjoy it and learn something along the way. So without further ado, here's the episode. All right, cool. Steve and Lenny, welcome to the podcast once again.
Thanks. Hey, thanks, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so since the last time we've talked, your freezers have been getting fuller and fuller.
Yeah, they have.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, we've been lucky. Yeah.
I think this is the first year that both of us have killed bucks.
Yeah, it is.
This has been alternating otherwise,
Yeah. And then Steve, you got a little goat as well.
I did.
That'd be good eating, man.
Oh, yeah, I already ate all the back straps.
Did you really?
In the freezer ready to go, so yeah.
That's awesome. Cool, so tonight we just kind of wanted to catch up on how the seasons are going thus far. Hear the stories of your hunts, hear the stories of how you're filling these tags, maybe connect it to some of the, tactics and bits of information that we've discussed in previous episodes. And then, along the way, just talk about gear, anything that's working well, not working well, and just kind of, I think it's really important, not only for us doing this podcast, but just really for every hunter to, after hunts, you got to debrief. You got to go through what worked, what didn't, what do I need to change for next time. And it's really good to do all of that while it's fresh in your mind. So that's kind of what we're going to do out loud in tonight's episode. So starting, I guess, chronologically, Steve, you were the first one to fill a tag. So let's dive into it and talk about how you get it done. Yeah,
so we we went in on Saturday, the 29th. Opening day was the 30th. Went into kind of one of our good deer hunting spots that we've known for a while now, and went in there Saturday. I'm trying to think, we got in there probably like 5 o'clock. Got camp set up on the ridge, and Lenny and I just sat there glassing until dark. And frankly, by the time it got dark, we were pretty bummed out. We were just kind of wondering where all the deer went. It was a little really cool weather, and then the few deer we had seen were all hard-horned already, which is very rare for us for August 30th.
Yeah.
Usually it's like a 50-50, if not like a 60-40 split on hard-horned versus velvet bucks. And once they go hard-horned, there's typically this transition where they drop down 500 to 1,000 feet, get more into the timber. Those bucks kind of start staging up and become a lot harder to hunt. So we went to bed Saturday night pretty discouraged. I mean, it's definitely, you got all that optimism of opening day, and we were both kind of looking at each other like, oh crap, man, this might not turn out very good tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the other thing is, they turn gray, and they are so hard to spot once they turn gray.
Yeah.
It's just like deer. And now, you just got to study the mountain, and they just kind of, pop out of nowhere. So we were hopeful,
right?
We just weren't finding them.
Then that Saturday night glassing, it was,
I think we saw one good buck.
Yeah, we saw one good buck, but it was pretty hazy. And even that buck, he was probably like a mile away. And I remember, I spotted him getting out of his bed under a tree, and then he fed out into the open, and he wasn't 20 yards from the tree. And I'm sitting there trying to tell Lenny where he's at, and Lenny's looking at me like, dude, I can't see. There's no buck. When they become gray like that, they're basically invisible. And then it was that buck, we spotted him with like 2 hours of light left, and he moved towards us and just disappeared for an hour. And then we finally saw him right at last light. And the buck literally got out of a little bed that was right in the middle of the rocks. We were looking at each other like that buck was there the entire time, and we were convinced he was gone. Not gone, but we went around a corner, bedded under something where he wasn't visible. But it just goes to show you how it was easy to get frustrated because they were hard-horned, and then they were gray, and they're hard to spot.
Yeah.
So that first night so Lenny brought his Go Light teepee, and then I brought my Jimmy's tarp, and we were on this ridge, just really rocky and steep and just kind of nasty. And the only place to pitch a tent was kind of in between these two dead logs. And we only had room for his teepee, so we both decided to sleep in that. And it was like, I don't know how strong the winds were that night. Like, got to be
40, 50 mile an hour gusts.
I was going to say 30, 40 to 50 gusts. Like,
yeah.
It was insane. There was 3 different times in the middle of the night, the wind picked up, like literally lifted the tent up. And I'm I'm grabbing the bottom of the tent, like rolling up, bear hugging it, just waiting for the wind to die down.
Yeah.
Die down, and then he'd jump out and he'd stake the freaking tent off. And then I think I was on the wind, like the side the wind was coming from, so I was always the one holding the tent. Yeah. One crawling out, freaking resetting the stakes. I mean, it was kind of soft soil, and those winds were.
It was insane.
Insane, yeah. I don't think we slept but like 2 or 3 hours that first night. So
yeah, those make for long nights. I've been in those. Like we were stuck down in the Aspens one time with a storm like that, and we literally were trying to find a spot to camp where a tree couldn't fall on us because there was literally just aspens dropping.
Right. And
literally through the night you'd hear them. It almost sounded like thunder when they'd crack and then fall. And I tell you what, it was hard to get a wink that night.
Yeah, we had this old big dead tree right next to us. You know, it's like it was only like a 20-foot stump left, and I was worried about that thing falling on us. So yeah. Anyways, we obviously survived the night and woke up in the morning. And one of the things, I don't want to say a strategy that we do, but we definitely, I think we're just lazy in the morning, and so we like to camp very, very close to where we want to glass.
And when we mean close,
literally, like I want to
unzip the tent,
and I already got my coffee ready, and I just like take 3 steps and I'm glassing.
Yeah,
so,
just leave your tripod out at night and just hook up.
Literally, yeah. So maybe some people would set up a different strategy to be a little low profile, but it doesn't seem to affect us much. So, anyways, we wake up, take 3 steps outside the tent, and we're glassing all the country. We were glassing the night before, and I can't remember exactly, but
we couldn't find any.
Yeah, we weren't seeing much. A few 2 points, maybe like a dinky 3. And
then
no elk, nothing. Yeah. I mean, nothing.
And then finally, after about an hour, normally we're kind of glassing the peaks. Then we started glassing the bottoms, right. And it was just like bam! All the bucks had moved from the tops into the bottoms from that storm.
Yep.
It was kind of amazing. I mean, it's definitely something for us to remember.
Right.
We spent the hour looking at the tops where they were, but that storm that night pushed everything, and I mean like right in the bottoms.
Yeah. So all the little bucks that were glassing the night before had dropped down. I don't know. I'd say 500 to 700 feet, just kind of out of the wind that night. And so first thing in the morning, not seeing anything, and then we finally start looking literally just down below us, and it wasn't. We just had to walk like 20 yards further out to kind of see the hill down below us. And then we spotted there was like a group of 7 little bucks and then a group of 2. And that group of 2 was a nice 4, right? Yeah. So it was a nice 4 point. And kind of flipped a coin. Lenny was shooter. And so that 4 point, he was with another 2 point. And they worked their way kind of up into this basin where we spotted the bucks the night before. And they bed down in a pretty good spot to where it's like, man, Lenny, I think you're going to be able to make that happen. So Lenny just kind of took off from there.
I basically just worked my way over to them, and by then the thermals were working. And
so you're going to come straight down on them?
Yeah, more or less. I kind of like in the bottom of a basin, and I kind of had to come down like a real rocky saddle with no cover. And that was a little sketchy, but it seems like, with deer, if you just move really slow and methodical, nothing quick, you can get away with it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. That's still like 250 yards away. So I just moved just real slow, and they just kind of let me get down there on them. And then once I got in the cover, dropped my shoes. But I kind of lost sight of them because they got up, and they kind of moved into another patch. And but I got set up, and there was a chute where I thought they were going to come up through. And I'm just sitting there, winds are good. And then, it's just deer out of the blue. They just kind of trot up the hill for absolutely no reason. Yeah. It's just one of those things. So I keep going into the next basin, and Steve, he kind of stayed back where we were.
So I stayed at the tents, just kind of glass and watch. And once I saw Lenny kind of blow the stock up, and we had planned
So from the tent, you could see Lenny stalking, and
Yep,
dang.
absolutely. Yeah, he was right. It wasn't 600, 700 yards away, something like that. It wasn't super far.
You guys are lazy.
Yeah, we're lazy enough to know that camping
Or really smart, one of the two. Well, let's go with smart.
Camping there where you want to be is a good idea. So anyway, so we had pre-planned. He was just like, I'm going to go do this stalk, and if it doesn't work out, I'm going to go over to this peak and look into this basin. I'm like, all right, well, if, all glass, and if I see you don't shoot one, I'll head down the ridge. So on the ridge that we camped on, I just started hiking to the east, and I'm hiking down the ridge, and it's a really cool ridge that is, it lends itself to like that. I think one of the earlier episodes we did were talk about having very huntable country to hunt. And it's a ridge that has this nice like kind of crescent shape to it. And it's steep enough that from the top, I can literally glass at the perfect angles into all those beds. And so I just started hiking down the ridge, just going really slow, really methodical. I'd sit down and glass. I'd put my binos on the tripod, so it's just super stable. I was going to see everything. And I'd sit there and glass for 20 minutes, and then I'd move like 50 yards, sit there and glass for 20 minutes. And I think like the third or fourth time I did that, I actually finally spotted 2 bucks up moving, and they were kind of just over this little rise, but I couldn't see everything. So it's just a funny part of the story is it goes back to them being all gray and impossible to find. I spot the deer, and I instantly like, oh crap, that looks like a nice 4-point. And I just grab my binos and my pack, and then I run like another 30 yards, and I start glassing down, and I cannot find the deer again. And it's like it's a pretty obvious spot, right? Like I'm glassing like this 200-yard area, and I think we're probably all guilty, but I know I'm really bad sometimes about not landmarking things.
Right.
Being like, see the deer and go, okay, there's a big tree that's got this unique characteristic. And
when I have your reference points.
Yeah, I had my reference points, and I did not pick one. And I went back there, and it took me another 30 minutes to find the freaking deer. And it was like, it blew my mind because they were right there in front of me, but they were just kind of moving in and out of these dead trees, and there's some rocks, and it's kind of steep. And finally they show up, and then I sat there, I don't want to say for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at the most, watching them until they bedded down. Super fortunate, bedded down in a great spot. So it was this. Ended up being this 4x3 with eye guards and an extra, just a really nice buck, kind of tall and narrow, and then like a super 2, as we call them, just a big 2-point. They bed underneath this tree. The 2-point, I remember the 4-point, like I'm sitting there watching him feed. I'm like, that sucker's going to go right to that bed. And sure enough, he does. And the 2-point was below him. And I was like, okay, please just bed anywhere below that 4-point. We'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Of course, as luck always has it, right? The 2-point fed up past the nicer buck and bedded like 30 yards above him. And I was just like, oh, you son of a, he was going to be right in between me and the nice buck as I put the stock on. So, anyways, the buck, that 2-point beds up like 30 yards above him and kind of had, I didn't have any other options or plan B. So I was just going to go make the stock happen. I got my landmarks. There's this one big dead tree that had like 4 stumps coming out of it basically. And then there was another dead tree and a clump of 4 dead, or not 4 alive pine trees. And so I kind of planned my stock out. And it's super, super good because I can look at the whole hillside and plan this out, right? There's no question marks of like, well, I don't know where the bucks are, so I'm going to try to sneak here and hopefully I can glass them. Like from my vantage point, I can see the bucks, I can see the trees I need to get to.
Yeah.
I do my best to landmark everything. Pop up over the ridge, kind of have to hike down probably 800 yards, and then I pop over the ridge and I'm able to hike down. It was windy enough that I felt I went like probably 200 yards down in my shoes. And this is just like nasty, rocky, sharp country. So you want to keep your shoes on as long as possible, but
about a 35-degree slope.
Yeah, it was 38-degree slope actually on my rangefinder when I shot him. But super steep and rocky. So I take my shoes off, and I got about 200 yards left to go down to him. And that 200 yards took quite a while, hour and a half of just peeking down there. And I did get lucky. You know, you had all my landmarks, and by the time I got there, everything looks different. You know, that big dead tree with 4 frickin' stumps. Everything looked different. It was like it flipped 180 degrees on me. And I got very lucky that I spotted the nicer 4x3 bedded and kind of able to get my reference points back. So started doing the stock. I'm sneaking down there. And of course, the frickin' Super 2 is bedded, like facing side hill, looking up. Like his natural position was to look kind of up the hill. And it was just like, literally, it was a painful stock of just, I got my binos up and I'm looking down at the buck, and I'd wait for that Super 2 to look downhill, and then I'd take 2 or 3 quick steps, and then I'd stop, and then I'd put the binos back up. And it was just this 2 or 3 steps at a time until I got down there. And I got to a point, I got 65 yards away from the 2 point, and the bigger buck disappeared. And this is just luck, where all of a sudden he reappeared and bedded right next to the Super 2. I was just like,
wow,
my lucky stars, because that bigger buck could have got up and fed to a different bed where I never would have seen him, and this, you know, would have been a different story. But anyways, got down there, I snuck into this deer bed, and I had this wall of little 10-foot pine trees in front of me, and I stood there for 2.5 hours. And I was just lucky that I had a good bed, because we've had spots before that we stalked into where, you know, like you can't move and your left leg goes completely asleep.
Yeah, you got rocks jabbing you.
Yeah, rocks jabbing you. That was like the most comfortable. I could have done freaking cartwheels in that little just hanging out.
You're like, well, if they're going to bed, I'm going to bed. So
yeah. So I had my bow set up, and as far as like getting in my head at that moment, I'm playing out every possible scenario I can of what is this buck going to do when he gets up, you know? And I had 2.5, 3 hours to do this. So you get
and
a
what
lot.
Distance were you at this point?
55 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 55 yards, when I got to that big bed, and that's with the 38-degree slope. So I think that's more like 70, 71, I guess.
Yeah.
Actual distance, but shoot for 55.
Uh-huh.
Rangefinder was telling me. So I'm just playing out all these scenarios of, if the buck gets up and he feeds this way, I'm going to do that. Or if he goes this way, I'm going to do that. I'm clearing out the bed underneath me of like any sticks and debris. And I even there was sticks hanging in the tree in front of me, and the wind was blowing hard enough that every time there was a really good gust, I'd break a couple limbs. Just
nice.
Not limbs.
Go
but
ahead and trim some shooting lanes.
Yeah, I was trimming shooting lanes. And so I was sitting there, and I'd break this little limb, and that way if he got up and just stood right where he was, I could have shot from where I was standing, you know, like in between. I had like a 4-inch little crevice in between the trees. And then I had this, if he got up and fed to my left, there was another bed right there that I was actually convinced that's where he was going to go at some point. That was a 50-yard shot. So I broke a couple limbs off there, and both of those I kind of like pre-planned, like, all right, my feet are going to be here. So I made sure I cleared out all the sticks and dirt and stuff, so I wasn't going to make any noise. Of course, all that doesn't work out, but after a while, the buck jumps up and starts feeding. He feeds out to the right. So he gets up, starts feeding. I move to the right of the tree just a few yards, and it's so steep that I remember like my left leg's like kind of fully extended down to the hill, and then my right knee is bent up really tight. Mm-hmm. And I was able to range him 55 yards, draw, and it was kind of steep enough, and I was positioned right where I could put my left elbow on my knee. So I'm I'm rock solid, start settling in 55 yards, feel really good about the shot, and then of course the buck takes another freaking step, and all I can see is his ass. It's like, oh, you got to be freaking kidding me. Anyways, this goes on. I actually ended up drawing 4 times and letting down, because he would get to a spot, I'd get a range, I'd draw, I'd settle in, he'd take a step, freaking let down. This happened 4 different times. On the 5th time, he actually moved across this big tree It's kind of the tree that I was dancing with, trying to get a shot on the buck. The limbs kept getting in the way. So he fed to the right more, and I had to scoot out from my kind of covered area about 10 yards. Had the buck at 50 yards, slightly quartered away, and he was just feeding, completely unaware I was there. Anchor, he's quartered away, so I'm thinking I got to aim back, and I shoot, and then just kind of instantly just like knew I hit him, but I freaking hit back, and I was you're just so disappointed. Just like you get that odd opportunity, and I just choked. I hit probably 8 inches left of where I wanted to, and knew it was a gut at best to liver shot.
So it wasn't quartering enough where you thought you got like the opposite lung or anything at all?
See, that's what, I don't know. I guess we're all guilty of it, but it just, in my head, I'm trying to replay it, and I knew he was quartered away, so I was aiming further back than I normally wanted to, probably 3 or 4 inches, and then I just hit 8 inches left of where I was aiming,
Yeah.
And it was a tough shot. I mean, it's 55 yards, shoot forward at a 38-degree angle. So
right.
That's
probably odd footing still. And
yeah, of course, it wasn't standing flat down at the archery range.
Yeah.
Anyways, I hit him. He ran out there to 70, tried launching another arrow, shot just over his back, and then he ran like 5 yards, and I tried shooting another arrow, and I freaking missed him, and it was just kind of that total chaos.
Yeah.
And then
reload.
Yeah, reload. I was just like, just pure frustration. Luckily, he ran down the hill, bedded underneath a pine tree, and that's kind of that scenario. I'm sitting there like what do I do? Like, he's bedded, he's really hunched. Like, when I had saw him last, he was really hunched up. I knew he was hit hard.
Yeah.
I was like, do I try to sneak down there and put a shot in him, or do I just let him be, and just hope he dies? And after about 2 hours of watching him, he got up, fed down the hill, not fed, just moved down the hill like another 200 yards, went into another little timber patch, and he stood there forever, and then moved another 100 yards, went into a timber patch, just a small little 30-foot wide timber patch. Everything else around him was wide open, and that was right at dark. Felt pretty confident he was going to be there in the morning. Pretty miserable night of sitting there waiting for him to freaking die, wondering if he was going to die, wondering if he was going to be there in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Basically woke up in the morning, walked right there, and he was dead. So it was a good, I don't know. I got fortunate that it was like open enough country that I could see this deer and see him move from little timber patch to timber patch. If it had been thick timber, I told Lenny, I was like, I would have lost that buck. So
yeah,
I got lucky. But, sometimes I guess that's part of hunting.
Yeah, for sure. Did you ever go back to, like, the first spot he was in when you made contact and see what kind of blood you had or anything? Like that next day?
I actually never did, because it was such steep, crappy country that I never hiked back. I had to hike up and back side hill to him, and I never wanted to leave him that night,
Right.
I didn't want to take my eyes off of him. So waited till it got dark. I did have to hike back up in the dark and go get my pack and shoes and stuff like that. Hike down to the bottom, set up camp, and we said in the morning went right there, and he was laying there. So it was a good lesson, and I think it's so tough to do. We had this happen on an elk a couple years ago with a buddy of mine. But when you're ever questionable about the hit, I think the best thing to do is just lay back. Mm-hmm. As hard as that is, lay back and give them till the next day.
Yeah.
Trust me, I was sitting there thinking of, because like that morning, I think we heard some coyotes howling, and I'm such a meat orientated guy that I was just like pissed that some coyotes were going to get to the deer, and had all these different scenarios playing out in my head. But ultimately, the best thing to do if you want to get that animal back is if the hit is not perfect, hike out of there and come back the next day, because unpressured, they're not going to go.
No.
Yeah, they're not going to go far, 200 to 500 yards, and you can start gritting. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is you either have a lethal hit or you don't. And if you don't, I mean, that's horrible. You don't want to wound them, but they're strong, they're tough, though they can survive that, non-lethal hit. If you do have what could be a potential lethal hit, I think you're right. Most often you're only going to make it worse by pushing them, you know? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, not only is it tough to wait and wonder, but I think so much of us, especially like you said, you know, meat oriented, like you want to feel like you're doing something versus just sitting there.
Right.
But sometimes the best thing to do is just sit there.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super tough.
It was so hard not to try to sneak in there and shoot him when he was bedded that 2 hours right after the shot. But it was just, I knew it was the right decision. And when he got up, I freaked out, but I remained patient and got lucky. So so that morning woke up. I was by myself. Lenny was still way up on top of the peak, you know, a couple miles and a couple thousand feet away from me. And quartered him up, loaded him up in the pack, hiked him back down to the kind of the main trail, hung him up, hiked back around, and then Lenny and I hunted for the next day and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a whole nother topic and something we need to cover in an episode because we have a ton of questions about it. But what were the conditions like in terms of keeping that meat cool while you hunted a few extra days, and what, you know, in general, what specifically did you do to make sure it'd be cool enough?
Yeah, it was cool. We got lucky for August 30th. I mean, the high was like 58 degrees. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really cool opening weekend. I mean, we've had them before where they're in the 80s. Yeah. So, if it was in the 80s, I would have hiked them out of there. We had a couple coolers waiting at the truck
with blocks of ice.
I would have hiked them out there, but knowing that it was cool, I wasn't too concerned about it. I just got it all hung up underneath in this clump of trees, you know, that were basically the sun wasn't going to touch it all day long.
Right.
Through the thermal, you know, it's kind of the bottom of the canyon, so the winds are kind of all over the place, keeping things cool. And it really was kind of a non-issue.
Yeah. That's definitely favorable conditions for that early.
Yeah, it was. If it had been warmer, it would have been a different story. So.
Yeah. Cool.
But so Lenny, how'd the rest of the hunt play out?
Well, you know, a couple things I actually tried new on this trip. You know, Steve, he's always going lighter and lighter. So I got a quilt. Actually, Steve got a quilt.
Did your grandmother sew it for you?
Yeah, so basically, you know, it's a sleeping bag that doesn't have a bottom. So you pretty much sleep on top of your pad and then just lay a down, like half sleeping bag on top of you. And I'm kind of a stomach side sleeper, which I thought was going to be a great deal because then I could, you know, otherwise in a mummy bag, you kind of get all twisted up in it when you're turning. Yeah. I was kind of getting sick of that, and I could drop like 20 ounces. So I was all excited about it, and I was going floorless. But, you know, that first weekend, so first I got a hole in my pad going floorless.
Wait. Didn't we talk about Old Faithful in the gear episode? How you're raving about this pad for like 7 or 8 years and no holes?
Yeah.
Is this the pad?
Yeah, so I bought a new one. So I bought a Sea to Summit pad, full length. You know, before I've always done a 3/4 length.
And the new one has the hole? Yeah,
so brand new one. Pretty much first trip out, I get a hole in it. I'm like, really? You know, so there's a cost to going light.
Yeah.
But you know, it was that quilt was kind of a nice because it does give you some more freedom, I guess. You don't get bound up, and this is enlightened.
Enlightened equipment.
Enlightened equipment, and it kind of straps underneath your pad, so it doesn't move anything overnight. But the problem is I sleep floorless with a teepee, and we're always on top of these ridges, and the winds blow all night, and so literally I could feel like the draft all night through my bag.
Yeah, you just don't have a seal. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm kind of a cold sleeper anyways. So by the end of it, let's say that on the last trip, I left that at home and I took my 40-ounce sleeping bag.
So you look over at Steve and he's just so happy his pack was so light and he's sleeping well? Is that how that was going?
Yeah,
he didn't mind it.
It's ridiculous, honestly. You know, because on the third night we were in there, he's actually in his Jimmy tarp, you know, half open. It was actually a really nice night that night. It was kind of cold, but and he's got a Jimmy tarp that's completely open, and he uses a quilt too. But honestly, I'm going back to floorless double wall tent. I don't care. I want to be comfortable.
Yeah. So did you patch that new pad, and that's what you were still using with the quilt and everything?
Yeah. So I got a hole on it on that trip, And then
it was a slow enough leaking hole that he just had to fill it up like once or twice during the night.
Yeah, 2 times a night.
So did that pad have a decent R value? Because that can make a huge difference alone.
Oh, they claim like a 4.2 R value, but I think they're stretching it, honestly, because I think it's cooler than my other pad, and I think my other pad was even less than that. I think it was supposed to be like a 3, but I don't know. I don't know how they test these things, but I think they might be fibbing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, it's just, the cool thing is I think just everybody's different, and I've just decided that my pack's going to weigh 3, 4, 5 pounds more than Steve's, and I'm going to be...
But you're man enough to handle it.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. Yeah, so that was kind of a fun thing to experiment with, but I'd probably going back.
So besides the quilt, did you just not like the floorless because of the wind factor?
Yeah, a little bit because of the wind. It was definitely windier this year, seems like.
Every night.
Yeah, just because of the weather. And then also, since I got this lighter weight pad, now I'm like these guys, and I'm like trying to get every stick and thorn out underneath, because now, I never had a hole in my other one in like years. And now I'm all panicked that I'm going to get a hole, and it's just not worth it to me.
What I do with that, with the floorless, just to protect my pad, is I think it's from Gossamer Gear. They have this plastic sheath. I think they call it like a polycro sheath. It looks like it'd be saran wrap or something. It's just like this very clear, thin, kind of shiny film, but it's absolutely like indestructible. But it's super thin and super light, and so that's what I always bring with the floorless shelter, just to throw under my pad to protect it. And I've used it for a few years, and that one little $8 piece of whatever is holding up pretty good.
So do you make it just big enough for your pad or for your entire floor?
It's pretty much just for my pad. They actually sell them in different sizes, though. So I think you can get one that might be big enough to fit 2. I just pulled it up. It's Gossamer Gear, and that's a Polycro. They have a medium 2-pack for $10, or one large for like $9. But yeah, that's what I use. And I know some guys use like Tyvek, which is like the house wrap stuff. They'll just get that, but yeah, that can help protect the pad for sure.
It just goes back to Lenny was hitting on. There's like, you really can't cheat it. Like if you go to like a floorless shelter, you're gonna have more wind coming through. You need a warmer sleeping bag, so that's gonna be. It's just kind of
There's floorless. You got to put something down.
Yeah, floorless. Now all of a sudden you got to protect your pad if you want a nicer pad.
Yeah.
Right now with the Jimmy's tarp and their bivy sack, I got a pretty solid combo. The only thing I was wishing was that first night that I'd have been in that crazy windstorm in it, just to see how it would have handled up.
I'm pretty sure it would have flown away.
It hardly wins that night, but
especially with how open it is, it becomes a wing at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, I would have been curious to see how it did. But I did use it the 2 nights after that, and it was awesome. I loved every second of it. And the biggest thing being zero condensation, because there's nothing to condensate. There's so much air moving through it. But the saving grace is that bivy sack with it. To me, that's what basically this nice little tight, non-breathable sack really that's around your bag, which I stayed toasty warm inside of it.
Right. Yes. You don't get any drafts.
Yeah, I'm not getting drafts or anything.
Protecting
like that.
your pad. Yeah, I can see the benefit.
So
cool.
Yes.
Any other gear or anything new that worked or didn't work well?
The new First Light pants.
The corrugates.
Yep. Use those. As far as the material goes, I'm really impressed. I mean, at first I thought they're going to be a little bit too warm for early season. I mean, still about twice as thick as the old Canabs. But, honestly, they did really good. They cut the wind good. They're durable. I didn't rip them at all. The pockets are a huge improvement.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd say is for my size, the fit could be better. Yeah. It's like smalls are too small around the waist, and then the mediums are too big around the legs. And I don't have a huge belly. So the fit could leave a little bit to be desired for my build. But besides that, they were.
It's definitely like, because Lenny's a little smaller than I am, and we're both wearing mediums, and they fit me pretty well on the waist and everywhere else. But definitely, if you're kind of in between sizes, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so tough too, because I mean, it's hard to have that, small, medium, large, extra large type of sizing and fit everybody. I mean, you're talking 4 sizes and, dozens of body shapes and types and everything else.
Right.
It is tough. Like, I would love to wear a medium in terms of waist, but they'd be ridiculously short. And then a large, is too roomy, pretty much in the waist, and obviously you can run suspenders, but even that I'd like to see a little more length, but that's just because I'm a little bit freakish. So maybe First Light should make long sizes. Kenton, Ryan.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's transition. So kind of that trip came and went, and then how did you get onto your buck, Lenny? And first, a caveat for you podcast listeners, just to reveal the whole story here. Lenny shot a pretty good buck and doesn't obviously want to share where it came from, but we won't lie about the state, right, Lenny? Even though you wanted to? It's Wyoming. No, it's not.
Oh, it was.
Yeah. It was somewhere in the lower 48. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, over-the-counter tag, and it's funny, we do get asked a lot, like, oh, what unit was that? And, we spend, honestly, a lot of time looking for these deer, and they're hard to find. And sometimes, it's some people can be more paranoid than others. But, I think really my season's almost like the story of how close you can be and be successful or not successful. Because like while Steve was hunting his buck, I actually found the big buck from the night before. Mm-hmm. And so I dropped down on him, he was bedded in a perfect spot. Little ridge between us, thermal's blowing up, I dropped my pack, dropped my shoes, throw the Slurpee stalker on, and I'm like, man, this is going to be perfect. Sneak down there. I get right to where I think he's going to be, and I'm kind of looking at the tree where I think he's supposed to be. And this is a nice buck. I mean, he's got, he's a 4x4 with a big inline and like a little like tripod thing or something on the top of it. I mean, he's a really good buck, mature buck. But he had gotten up and had started feeding. And so I saw him, fortunately, before he saw me. And, so I heard him duck down behind this little ridge. And I'm in my socks. And I finally get him to range through the grass. He's like 57 yards. Broadside. I go to draw. This little buck walked right in front of me, so I let down, and then he clears open, and both bucks got their heads down. They kind of turn, looking away from me, so I'm able to draw, stand up, put my pins on him, and I miss him, and I'm just like, crap, all that work, and I'm literally inches from killing a great buck, and then I come home and I look on Facebook and everybody else has killed a 180-inch buck, and I'm just, and Steve's killed one.
So rejected.
Like, it's, and I put on that stock earlier in the day and blew that. And then when Steve met back up with me, I tried to get on 2 more bucks, one that evening. It blew him up. Got on another 2 bucks, blew them up.
Both of those stocks, though, are
lower
new.
percentage.
I mean, you're already a low percentage, but those are like, everything's got to be perfect, come together for those ones to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, I literally blew like 6, 7 stocks in a row. Or 1, 2, 3, 4 stocks in a row. Yeah.
It's kind of like back when you were dating, huh?
I would have took those odds.
Back in Lenny's rodeo days.
Yeah, so, I was bummed, but, I mean, it's deer hunting. And so we blow out of there. Steve and I, we pack his deer out. We get out and we're going on a moose hunt in a couple of days. And so I tell my wife, hey, I'm going to stay home because I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. And, we got 2 small kids. And so, of course, I'm around the house all day this last Saturday. And my wife finally looks at me and says, I can tell you really want to go, don't you? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I never said anything. And she's like, you know what? Just go. go wherever, just be home for dinner tomorrow night. And I'm like, okay, I can do that.
And this was at what time?
This is like at noon on Saturday.
Oh, wow.
And so, and you guys who have kids, you understand this. So we still got to put the kids to bed.
Yeah.
I still got to shoot a couple arrows through my bow. And, so by the time I throw all my gear together, because I'm completely unprepared, I'm literally leaving like at 3:00. And she's like, just go somewhere where you can be home, at a decent time. So I go to a completely...
And you live in what part of Wyoming, Lenny?
Yeah, Gillette.
Yeah, okay.
So I drive just east of Gillette. So we go to this spot where, we really hadn't been in before, actually in a really long time. But it was a little bit closer than where we normally hunt. I had to go somewhere close, and I was just solo by myself. And, I bust in there. I literally get in there with maybe, an hour of light left. And I am going to shoot a 3-point. I don't care. This is my last day to hunt before I go on this moose hunt. Once I get back to the moose hunt, I'm kind of done.
Yeah.
So I spot like these 3 young bucks that evening. I try to get up on them, and as luck has it, I think they're going left. They go right. Doesn't work out. And so then I spend the night in the bottom in my, real sleeping bag this time, which is good. It was really cold that night. And, I get up in the morning, and the very first buck I glass is actually this buck that I shot. And I look up there and I'm like, man, that's a really big typical. And if anybody knows me, I'm not like a real technical antler guy. I just kind of like they're big or they're small. So I'm not, counting inches. I'm just like, wow, he's big. And then I spot another buck, little non-typical. And then I spot a couple other little bucks, like 150 type bucks. And literally I tell myself, I'm going to go hunt the buck that beds in the easiest spot that I have the highest percentage chance of getting. And honestly, just as luck would have it, the non-typical, he beds in like a big timber patch. I'm like, check him off the list. And then, the other ones, they bed in kind of a mediocre, kind of rocky spot. And this bigger buck, he bedded in these jack pines that I thought I had a chance. And all along you got to think, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I need to be home for dinner tonight.
You got to bring home dinner tonight.
Yeah. So, I basically go down one draw from this buck, and I go, climb a couple thousand feet trying to get up to him. And, one thing probably a little bit different than Steve and I did this year, we hunted more solo. I mean, we hunted together, but we also hunted solo. And, for guys who hunt together or solo, I mean, the biggest advantage of hunting solo is everything just slows down so much. For whatever reason, when you're with somebody, you have a tendency to go fast. I don't know why. I mean, because Steve hunts without me, he goes slower. When I hunt without him, I go slower, but together we go faster. Mm-hmm. I think you always feel like there's this pressure to do something when somebody else is with you.
Yeah.
When sometimes the most important thing is to do nothing. So, I mean, I knew this was a good buck. And so I was really taking my time, and he was across like a 200-yard draw. And I was kind of being so careful that I actually took my shoes off, and I just snuck out to a little rise in the hill where I could glass these jack pines and see if I could find them bedded there. I'm glassing. I'm like, man, where'd he go? And then again, it's a lot of luck. He just kind of stood up in the middle of the jack pines, and he kind of started feeding across this hill. And probably if there's one thing, we kind of have this formula for deer where we try to bed them down and then get on top of them and sneak down on them into their bed. Mm-hmm. But I think how I hunted this deer and how I hunted some deer last year, I think there could be some alterations to that. And what we notice is it seems like especially the bigger mature bucks, like they like to bed earlier. Like this buck, he probably bedded at 8:30 in the morning when all the other bucks are still out eating. Wow. And so I had a pretty good idea that he was probably going to get up again and probably feed for an hour, 30 minutes, and then he'd find his bed for the day. And so, when I was trying to get up there, my idea was, well, if he's bedded there, I'll try to get on him. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I think he's going to get up again because he bedded so early. And kind of luck too, when he did get up in bed, he started feeding towards me. And so he was kind of going to his next bed. And I was able to kind of back out, in my socks and my Slurpee stalker and get up, and kind of like Steve, I got into this nice little deer bed. And literally I just waited there for probably 45 minutes watching this deer just slowly work his way over to me. And I kind of picked out this group of trees where I had a pretty good idea where he was going. But the amazing thing is with these deer, at any moment, they can change direction. And when he got to about 80 yards, the winds were still coming downhill because it was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and I was on a slope that didn't have any sun on it yet. And a deer below me had walked below me, and he blew out and kind of did a stomping thing. And I don't know why this buck didn't even pay attention to him. I mean, it seemed like 99% of the time, this buck should have raised his head and, said, "What's going on?" and blew out of there. He didn't. He just kept feeding. And honestly, I just sat there and waited. And he came down, and I'd ranged these two small trees at about 36 yards. And there's about a 2-foot wide opening between the two of them. And he literally fed right behind them. And, big thing with these deer is being able to draw on them. And he kind of stuck his head behind that tree. As soon as he did, his vitals were in that 2-foot window, and I drew, and ended up being about a 48-yard shot. And I shot, and I did not see. I'm not one of those guys that can watch like my arrow. Like I don't know why, but all I heard was clink. I heard my arrow clink off the rocks, but he jumped. It seems like when those deer, when they get hit, they kind of do that kind of jump straight up kind of kick, and took off. And so I was like, okay, I think I hit him. And I went up there, and sure enough, there was blood right there. But where he kind of angled out away from me, I couldn't see where he went. And the terrain there is real, steep. Like ravines, cliff ravines and jack pines. And so I couldn't see very far. And so the blood only went for about 30 yards. And then I literally spent almost 2 hours, literally on my hands and knees, looking for blood, circling, gritting, starting to freak out a little bit. And finally, I went back to the spot where I had shot, and I looked, and I said, okay, there's kind of this, this window here between 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock is kind of like the only window where I couldn't see. So I kind of narrowed it down to that window. And I went a little further the next time. And then all of a sudden, there was this literally almost a cliff, like a 15-foot cliff. And I thought, no way he went down that. He's hurt. But I walked about 2 feet further, and sure enough, there's blood all down this cliff. And he went down this little cliff, like 15-foot cliff, back up the other side, and then into these next jack pines. And then I lost his blood a little bit more. But then, fortunately, I kind of stayed on it and found him. And he ended up tumbling, I don't know, it was like 100 yards, 50 yards down a hill. Because it was so steep in there. It was just like steep rocky ravines, and broke off one tine. And he'd actually died on his feet. So he probably went 200 yards before he died, but it took me about 3 hours to find him.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
did you make it home for dinner?
Yeah, not even close. My wife was close to calling search and rescue. So I think I got on him about 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock is when I finally found him. And he's just an awesome, typical buck. By far and away the biggest buck I've ever killed. He's about 30.5 inches wide. One of my buddies threw a tape on him, and I think he's going to be like about a 190 buck. Typical, no extras on him. He's an amazing buck for over the counter, Idaho buck. Oh, yeah. Did I say Idaho?
Yeah, you just got confused. Wyoming. That's awesome.
Tell them why the picture is with you in the buck in your backyard.
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of wondering about that when Steve texted me the picture. I'm like, what kind of weird photo shoot is Lenny doing?
Oh, yeah. So I get up to him, and I pull out my camera, and I go to snap my first picture. No SD card.
Oh, no.
I've never killed a giant buck, and I have no SD card in my camera.
0 field photos with them.
Yeah, so I did actually have my phone with me.
Oh, okay.
But it's with my phone, so they're not very good.
Yeah.
And I guess everybody else's phone has a timer on it. My phone doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
man.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, great buck. By myself, packed in. So I got him all cleaned up, caped him, loaded everything up, and went to throw the pack on. I could not stand up. It was so heavy because, I'm way up on the top and the trail's all the way at the bottom, and I don't want to come back. So, I do the whole literally like get the pack on your back, lean against the hill, roll over on all fours, slowly stand up. And fortunately I have walking sticks, and that's the only way I made it down the hill. But it is one of those things where, one wrong step, I swear is going to blow my knee out.
Yeah.
But I made it all the way to the bottom. And then from there, I just said, there's no way I can do this and pack it all the way out. So I dropped half of it, took out half of it to the truck, went all the way back in, took out the other half all the way back to the truck, and then I got home about 1 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang, that's a cool buck. For you guys listening, to see both Steve and Lenny's buck, you can for sure head over to Instagram. It's at Hunt Backcountry and see them. They're both really nice bucks.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a really cool, story to have, your biggest buck and it be this, kind of wild solo trip and a last minute deal, and that's cool.
Yeah, it was. It's funny going up there. I mean, I guess there's one thing to learn is, you got to go to kill him. I mean, that's all there is to it. You got to get out there and do it. And, it's funny, when I was going up there, I was like thinking, what am I doing? I got so much stuff to do. I shouldn't be doing this. But I'm sure, as everybody knows, you kind of can't stop yourself, but,
right.
And you just got to, and like this one, it was a completely random, new place. And, you just got to get out there and do it.
Yeah, for sure. You got to be there, and, luck's got to be on your side. But yeah, just being out there to create opportunity, it's not going to happen from home.
Yeah.
Yep.
Never killing something from your couch.
Yep. That's what you got to tell the wife, right, Lenny?
I know, she just keeps saying, but I don't like deer meat. Yeah.
Oh, man. That's funny.
Yeah.
So you guys are getting ready to take off and shoot a little over 24 hours for Alaska, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty late at night on Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 a.m. we leave to Alaska. So we're scrambling. I'm over at Lenny's house tonight, and I brought a bunch of random last minute crap and picking up some stuff from him, and hopefully tomorrow we're packed, and then we will be packed tomorrow.
Yeah, we have to be.
Yeah, and hit the plane and head up there, and then from there it's 14 days of nothing but the Alaska bush.
So you guys, it's the whole Pure Elevation crew, right? So you two, and then Jason and Tyler.
Yep.
Yeah. We were trying to camp all together, but it was kind of suggested that wasn't smart, just really reduce our odds. So we're doing.
That's what I was getting at, is how you kind of divvying up who's hunting sort of together, or whose turn is it? I mean, I didn't know if the 4 of you were staying together. It seems like that'd be a horrible. You can't flip a coin at that point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So Lenny and I will be camping together, and then Jason and Tyler will be 5 to 10 miles away from us, something like that. Which we're kind of hoping that if Lenny and I tag out, we can get those guys on radios or something and hike over to them. So
yeah,
we'll kind of see how that all plays out, though.
Yeah, that's exciting. Do you all just have moose tags?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only other tag we could have got for the area is a black bear tag. But,
yeah. Gotcha. Well, that's awesome. We'll be sure to follow up with an awesome story of how you guys get your moose.
Yeah, so
it's going to happen.
Keep the lucky streak rolling here. We just got off to a good start. So how about you? When do you head out for elk?
We still have a little over a week. So
okay.
I'm just like itching, kind of going stir crazy. Keep going through again my gear, and yeah, with work situations and things like that, we're kind of hunting we are hunting pretty much we're hunting down to the last day in Colorado if we need it. So
awesome.
Yeah, we'll have about 7.5 days to hunt, but hopefully we won't need that much.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. And there'll be 2 of you?
Yeah, 2 of us. So make the long drive out and get right to it and get it done. So we're planning on, because we're going to be camp's 5-ish miles back. We have a packer on standby. So, hopefully we can get something down fairly soon. And then just basically to save the time of us packing something out, we're just hopefully going to get it to an accessible location, have the packer come in and get it so that we can just keep hunting and try and fill 2 tags.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
what's that packer cost? A couple, $300-$400, something like that?
Yeah, it was 3 something. Yeah, $350 or so.
Awesome.
So, but it's, it could be the difference between spending 36 hours packing meat or 36 hours trying to fill a second tag.
Absolutely.
So.
Cool.
Yeah, exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, good luck, man. I guess we'll check in when we get back.
Or when you get back, probably, because you'll probably be hunting when we get back.
Yeah. Yeah. When do you guys get back?
24th.
Yeah, I'll still be out.
Okay.
Still be out. So. All right. Well, yeah, just for you listeners, I think actually on the way out, my hunting partner Jared and I are going to, while we're making the trek from the Midwest out to Colorado, while we're driving, sort of do like a last minute episode and do a pre-hunt and then hopefully a post-hunt podcast on the way home, pretty informal. So look out for those. And then we'll be back for sure with Lenny and Steve and probably more of the Pure Elevation crew about their Alaska adventure. And then on into the fall, we have all kinds of, interviews that we want to do with other folks and, topics that we want to address for you guys. So keep the feedback and questions and reviews coming. Hit us up on iTunes and take a minute to do that. It helps a ton. Or email us at podcast@exomountaineer.com.
Thank you for listening to the Hunt Backcountry Podcast.